Hello and welcome to I Finally Had 10 Minutes and my guest, Justin Dini. Justin, so good to see you.
Hi, likewise.
Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Up until September of this year, I was the Chief Communications Officer of Paramount Global, where I was for about 8 years. And prior to that, I spent 10 years at Brunswick Group. And prior to that, earlier in my career, I was a journalist at various business publications here in New York and a speechwriter for the New York City Controller and a proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin.
My goodness, there's like nothing you haven't done. It's very interesting. Okay,
Well, and the best job I ever had was editor-in-chief of the Badger Herald, the school paper at
that's
Wisconsin.
very prestigious, though, I'm going to
Pretty good
say.
job.
It's impressive.
Hard to beat.
So, with all of that background, we're going to jump in with
Yeah.
the AI question. Why do you think some companies, and we'll say in the comp space, are hesitant to embrace AI tools?
Well, I think it's still not particularly well understood as a tool. I don't know that. I think it's lumpy in terms of its adoption and use on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, at Paramount, we try to implement a training program for my team to better educate everyone to get comfortable with the tools. But it's certainly in its very early phases,
Right.
figuring out what it's appropriate for and what it's not appropriate for. And frankly, there are some people who worry still and will continue to that it will replace them. And in comms, I think that feeling is particularly acute.
Hmm.
And so there's a fear of it.
Right. Interesting.
Ultimately, it's coming, it's here. And so adapting to it
Right.
and figuring out how to master it before it masters you is probably sound advice.
Why do you think leaders are hesitant to bring in fractional expertise? Understanding it's not necessarily the CCO, it could
Mhm.
be as an adjunct, it could be to do a special project, it could be for someone who's out or anything. And why do you think they should do it anyway?
Well, I think, and full transparency, I did not employ fractional roles during my time at Paramount. So I think it's partly unfamiliarity,
Hmm.
and therefore, for CCOs who are juggling a million things at once,
Yeah.
figuring out a new model,
Yeah.
might be challenging. And so therefore, just the basic logistics of like, what is this? How does it work? How am I going to manage this?
Right.
Is part of the other stuff, the rest of my team that I need to manage. How do I explain this to my team? I think all of those are sort of fundamental hurdles.
Right.
And if you haven't done it and you don't know the benefits of it, you may only see the downside of
Right.
having to manage it and the complexities of that.
Yeah.
That said, so many teams and so many comms leaders find themselves in situations where they are resource deprived,
Correct.
that this could be a nice in
Hmm.
between
Yeah.
of taking either an overburdened team member who has 9,000 other things to do and
Yeah.
sliding one more project on their list, especially if it's a priority project,
Right.
or hiring a consulting firm or agency to do it. This might be
Yeah.
an in between that, at a minimum, it would be worth the try if
Right.
you feel confident that the person put into the role is capable of doing it, particularly if it's a person who can do it with minimal handholding from you.
Sure. I think you just came up with our new slogan. Fractional. It's worth a try.
There you go.
Perfect.
Why not? Right.
I mean, it's
Throw
true,
something
but it's
against
like,
the wall and see what sticks.
that's awesome. Thank you. What is the funniest misunderstanding you've encountered at work?
Well, as Woody Allen said, comedy is tragedy plus time.
Correct.
And so the one that came to mind was when I was at Brunswick,
Mm.
and I was asked to attend to a meeting with a reporter in person, and the client was a hedge fund based in Chicago.
Mm.
So I flew to Chicago, went to their offices, only to find that the meeting was actually in New York, where I was based, and
Oh,
that's where the exec and the reporter were.
oh
Um,
no. And that's
still really,
pre-Zoom. Like you
oh,
couldn't zoom in.
no, exactly. It was,
Oh man.
that was, still don't really understand how that happened. And one of my colleagues who I would assign responsibility for the miscommunication ended up having to staff the meeting. But
That's a good one.
wasn't laughing
No,
at the
no.
time, but in
Oh.
hindsight, very funny.
When when has silence been your most powerful communications tool?
Well, I would say my response to that would be less silence, but more asking questions. In other
Okay.
words, sometimes when you do what we do for a living, there's an expectation that you are going to have all the answers
Mhm.
immediately at your fingertips, and that's what everybody in the room is expecting.
Mhm.
And what I learned, particularly from my former boss at Paramount, Julia Phelps, was asking questions is probably is definitely the more effective way to suss out what are we trying to accomplish here, what are the root issues we're trying to address.
Right.
And so it wasn't so much silence as it was asking questions and then listening, really listening to the
Right.
answers, and then coming up with a solution, as opposed to starting the conversation with a series of recommendations where you may not yet be fully informed or aware of
Right.
all of the dynamics and stakeholders
Right.
a given situation involves.
And I've always found not being afraid to say, I don't know, but I will find out it's so important. People, again, when you think you have to be the smartest person in the room, it's hard to say that, right? But if you
Yeah,
can I just think people respect that. Some, I don't know, but I will find out for you and
right.
find out. So
Yeah,
I
give me a
respect that.
second. Let me
Yeah,
think about it.
exactly. Taking a beat. People really underestimate taking a beat.
Yes.
Think for a second.
Taking a beat and then pressure testing assumptions.
Yes. Why do that? Um, who would you have dinner with? Any communicator, real, fictional, alive, or dead? Who would you want to have dinner with and why?
Well, growing up in New York, I was always a huge admirer of Mario Cuomo,
Hmm.
our former governor, who was widely recognized for his eloquence.
Hmm.
And he famously gave the 1984 keynote at the Democratic National Convention when I was 11, I guess. And I remember watching it and being blown away by it. And so I was always impressed by his eloquence. And among other things, he famously said that you campaign in poetry and govern in prose, which by itself is
Poetry.
brilliant soundbite. But he wasn't a perfect governor, but he was a hell of a communicator and just a fascinating guy. And so I did have the privilege of meeting him
Mhm.
after he had been governor, but he was always sort of at the top of the list of people who I always admired as communicators.
So, coming to the last question. If
Yep.
you had an extra 10 minutes in your day, what would
Hmm.
you do?
If I had an extra 10 minutes in my day, what would I do? I would say it will be boring, but I always feel like I never have enough time to read.
Hmm.
And so I would spend it reading.
And what do you read typically?
I read everything I can get my hands on. I still read the print editions of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal,
Yep.
Magazine piles, New Yorker, The Atlantic, that are representative of both my demographic and my disorganization,
Yes.
and lots and lots of books, which my wife is urging me to read at pace so we can get rid of some of them,
Purge them? Yeah.
purge them.
Business books,
Piles and
fiction,
piles.
fiction, nonfiction?
All the above.
Uh-huh.
I'm about to start reading Andrew Ross Sorkin's new book, 1929. But I like to mix it up with
Right.
fiction. I've just recently read The Director, which is a book by a German author, which was fantastic.
Okay.
So literary fiction, genre fiction, history, business and financial stories.
Right.
I'm a pretty voracious reader.
All right, that was a very long conversation about books. Apologize, I just got into it.
No
Um,
worries.
but we're done. We finished. So
Great.
thank you so much for coming on. It was really a lot of fun, and
Thanks for having me.
hopefully you'll come back again.
Anytime.